We'll do a little breakdown. So this won't be for time, because I don't have a clock, but this is your pre-adjustment, your pre-chiropractic adjustment warm-up. So normally this is 6 minutes. We're going to start wrapping and squeezing a kettlebell. That's okay if you don't. Just bring your big toes together, heels 2-3 inches apart. Big breath. We're tightening the core. Don't crush that kettlebell, but we're squeezing enough. Getting those adductors to fire. Reaching overhead. Just reach the hands up or go to your sphere of tension. If you're new to foundation training, make sure you go to their website, check out this stuff. We're going to go just for an inch hinge. We're pulling the hips back to allow the thighs to wrap and squeeze just a little bit more. 10 breaths or a minute here in this position. And it just started when you started anchoring the legs. Got a good squeeze, good shake going on in my legs. Trying to get a little bit of hip flexion, adduction, internal rotation all at the same time in the hips. Those three things will pair together once you understand them a little bit more. Arms are working too, but we don't want them overworking where we're disengaging the low back. Keeping that core strong and protected as we hinge, not overarching the back. We're tightening as we reach overhead. Big expansive breaths into the back. Even like holding onto the kettlebell. Don't let your feet rock into your heels. Holding onto the ground, your mat, your grass, whatever you got inside of your shoes. Don't rack back into the heels. Hold to the ground, then hinge. The kettlebell might help support you there. Here we're just stepping. Step off to the right. Left foot is holding onto the kettlebell still. That's gonna feel like you're getting a little more of that flexion, adduction, internal rotation of the left hip. We can even laterally hinge by bending the right knee. That's gonna make that left hip work even more, pulling against that kettlebell. If your kettlebell's too light, it's gonna slide. This one's 45 pounds, so it's not going anywhere. So about 30 seconds or 5 breaths off to the right, and we'll switch it up. Maybe go to the little narrow founder for a second, switch it to the right, hinge the hips back. Maybe you gotta lower those arms to engage the low back properly before we raise the hands. And don't move into that lateral hinge until you're ready for it. So another 5 big breaths here. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Arms are pretty tired from being in this position. So we'll come back, switch it up again. Left foot's gonna be on the inside of the kettlebell. Arms are here in long wing. Pull your weight back. This is our lunge decompression. Weight's equal between the legs. I even like to pull a little bit more into the back leg, but that heel's lifted just an inch. 5 breaths here. Left leg, pushing it towards the kettlebell. Both legs are squeezing, scissoring towards each other until we hinge. Then we spread the ground into our woodpecker. And I'll show this from the other angle for the second side. So this is position 3. If you're feeling good here, you've hinged that hip back as far as you can, raise the arms as far as you can, we can add a rotation. Right hip's gonna roll in towards the left. Increasing that stretch on the outer side of the left hip. Piriformis, glute muscle. Don't let the leg roll away from the kettlebell. That's why it's there, to remind you, press into it. Switch it up, show you from the side now. Got my foot on the inside of the kettlebell. A little bit of pressure. Not a super long lunge. Don't want it super narrow, don't want it super long. Don't want to increase that knee bend. I like to start a little loose as we scroll the hips in, tighten just a little bit. We don't want to go knock-kneed, just a little pressure. Push the legs straight, get yourself tall. There's a chance to pull your shoulders down away from your ears. Straighten that back leg, we're squeezing the floor. Then we're spreading the floor as we hinge the right hip back. Wind's knocking me over. Hinge even a little bit more, raise the arms. Now that left leg is doing the rotation, which makes the right hip work by resisting rotation. It's anti-rotation exercise on the right hip. You should feel it in the right hip. You're gonna feel it everywhere else. Make sure you're getting that right hip working. Good, so another 10 breaths or 5 breaths in each of those little positions there. 5 here, 5 there. All right, that was 4. Next, we're moving into a forward fold. So back away from your kettlebell a little bit. We went narrow, we closed it down. Let's open it up now. Turn the feet in towards each other. Deep breath. We drop into a nice low founder position here. Severe tension. Pull the hips behind you so you kind of line up with the kettlebell. We don't want to be reaching, we're pushing into our toes. Don't want to be rocking back on the heels too. Grab the ground with your feet, hinge back, hold on to that kettlebell. Turn your feet in here too if you want a little more internal rotation. And I like to just lean into the kettlebell. Don't lock the knees back. Let the hips do the work. 5 breaths, then I'll walk myself down. Hips pulling away from the hands. Pulling those hips away from your hands, reaching the hands forward. 10 breaths here. Let's walk ourselves up slowly. Bring the feet in just a little bit. Now you can finally turn your feet out for the squat. So we're gonna do a little bit of a kettlebell action here. You can just do an FT squat, which is here, or I like the kettlebell. Bring it up into a goblet squat, drop down for a minute. Open up those knees, push them out if you have to. 10 breaths. Weight should be in the heels. Shouldn't feel as much in your knees. That kettlebell kind of pushes your center of gravity where you want. Don't want to go super low either. Keep that spine nice and tall. 10 big breaths. I will demonstrate the FT squat for you too here if you want to do that. You can do that next time. Don't just flop out of this. Press really hard. Push those knees away from each other. Get up tall. Let's show you the FT squat. If you're not familiar with kettlebell mechanics, don't try to swing that up there. If it's light enough, I guess you can just finagle it. But it's pretty much your founder. We've just got the feet slightly external rotated. I'm maybe even going into that founder position to start. Getting as much hip mobility as I can. Grounding, rooting the feet into the earth. Pushing those 3 points of contact hard into the ground. We don't want the hip roll, we don't want the feet rolling, pronating or supinating. Holding on tall and strong before we add that knee bend. It's important for those feet to lock in. They don't do funny things. So we're holding it here. We're not going butt tuck. Hips back. This is not a weightlifting squat. It's very different. It's just keeping that spine really straight. Not something you want to necessarily lift with. It's a more hip dominant squat, less in the knees. Knees shouldn't be shooting way out past the toes. All right. Well, that was your foundation training warm-up. Go get adjusted.